Let's get started. Today we're going to be making a card using cutting dies to create our very own stencils. Here I've used just a piece of transparency paper. And these are some beautiful cutting dies from hot off the press called Bodacious Blooms. I've used the medium and the small one to create this stencil. But I want to show you what the stencil this cutting die actually makes. It makes this gorgeous flower. Look at how pretty it is. You can fold up the edges and it has these kind of cutout sections around the edges. The center one is solid, but the other ones have that beautiful cutout feature, which is, I think, really different and really fun. You can get a lot of dimension with it. But here we're going to use it to make our own stencils. So what I've done and taped my stencil down onto a piece of craft paper. And I like to use a removable stencil tape and just get all the little edges and corners that you can. We're going to be using Color Box pigment dye ink in white. You can use whatever pigment ink you want. I recommend you use a pigment ink because it's really, saturated. And so I'm just going to go in and twist and turn and keep moving it and really get it really saturated in there. So I apologize ahead of time if the table is shaking because my camera wasn't too sturdy. So just bear with me with the shaking and let's just keep going forward and we'll get this beautiful card done. So just keep moving it and pressing it down, and I like to rotate the paper just so I can really get a good grip on the stencil because I am using a transparency sheet, so it's a little thinner. It might have a tendency to move around on you. So if you want, you can maybe use something thicker material to create your stencils, but I think transparency sheets work fine. Then you're going to go ahead and remove your tape. And my stencil was kind of sticking out, so I was able just to peel the whole thing off. And you'll see what we have left with is this beautiful flowered motif that we did using our cutting dies. And we want to let that completely dry before we move on. Okay, so it's completely dry and I've just put the stencil back over it. And I want you to see when you replace the stencil, just move it up slightly. You're going to have some open areas, but you're going to have some white areas that are going to be covered, and we want that. It's going to add just some fun dimension. So first I'm going to go in with my picked raspberry, and I just take my blending tool, and I'm just going to press it on there, just kind of pat it. And again, I apologize, the camera's not sturdy, so you're going to see a lot of shaking here, and I'll get that fixed right away for next time. Yeah, just keep going in with it, just keep pressing it down and just add that color and saturate it. And as I move up the stencil, I'm actually going to use a little bit less ink. So I'm going to show you here. There's just a tiny bit of ink that I'm going to add. And the reason why I do that is because when I come in with my next color, I want those two to kind of blend together right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use Ripe Persimmon next. And I'm going to ink up my tool, and I'm going to just start patting it in there. And you'll see that that picked raspberry and the persimmon, they blend together beautifully, and they kind of make their own new color. And so I'm going to keep moving on and keep pressing it down. You don't have to press really hard. It appears that I'm pressing really hard because things are moving, but I'm really not pressing that hard. And you can add as much or as little color as you want. I kind of want it to be in between a bright and a pastel. So I'm going to keep adding, and see at the top there I'm doing that same technique, a little bit of color because I want that persimmon and the mustard seed to blend together. So we have like a whole nother color, and what that does is it acts like a really beautiful gradient going up the page, all the colors blending together. I'm going to finish just adding the mustard seed, making sure those colors blend nicely together. And, like I said, you can add as little or as much as you want. And I want the yellow to be really kind of vibrant at the top. And if you forget a spot like I did here, don't stress. Just go back in with more color. You can always add more. So that's a nice feature. And, I want it to blend a little bit more. So I'm going to add a little bit more persimmon in with that yellow. So we just get that kind of beautiful gradient going on. So once this is done, I'm just going to leave the stencil on and let it dry here before we move on. Now, I wanted to show you how I made the tag. Here is a cutting die from Paper Smooches, and I've placed white and yellow paper behind it, ran it through the cutting die, and as I remove it, what happens is those letters get kind of smooshed down into the yellow, so I can just easily peel that first layer off, and this is going to be our tag. So to prepare it, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to add some foam tape. And I'm going to just put that right over where those letters go. And what this does is we're going to be able to take those yellow letters, put them back in to the white where it's been cut out and make our title or our sentiment in the inset. And it's a really fun look. So I'm going to take these tweezers and just show you really quickly how you just take out a letter and peel the white and the yellow apart. And then you're just going to take that yellow letter and you're going to stick it right back in where it belongs. And it creates this really wonderful look of it being kind of inset into the white, which is, I think, really fun. Now, note when you go back and you do like the letters like the B, A, or the P, anything that has that inner circle, you want to keep that and put the white back in the center, okay? And that's going to finish off the tag. You can see here. So now it just looks like it's a part of that white paper, which is really super fun. And then I went over it with some yellow stickles just to add a little bit of pop. So there you have it. There's our beautiful stencil cutting die card.